the District 1 Supervisor debate starring incumbent John Leopold and challenger Manu Koenig. This will be moderated by our own MZ, Michael Zwerling. That's coming up next. Keep it tuned in. AM 1080 KSCO Santa Cruz. The phone number to call in is 479-1080. I'm sure we're not going to get to phone calls right away, but you might want to get in queue 479-1080. It's 6:06. Here's MZ.
Dave Michaels, thank you for that fine introduction. Very much appreciate that. And both candidates were invited, but we only have a candidate in the studio. The incumbent, John Leopold, let us know, or his people let us know that he had other prior commitments, and we understand that, but he chose not to appear on this program. And we even offered to find maybe schedule another time, because when you try to get people's schedules, coordinated, it's almost like herding cats, So, in any case, it didn't happen. John Leopold is not here this evening. We have invited him or a campaign person to feel free to call in 479-1080 to participate rather than not be represented at all. But if that does not happen, his challenger, Manu Koenig, will be the recipient of the entire 2 hours that KSCO has designated for this candidates forum. So, Manu, welcome to KSCO.
MZ, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, wow. So is this the first campaign you've ever done?
It's the first campaign where my face was on the signs and my name was on the on the ballot.
Oh, I see. Where you were a candidate.
Yeah, I participated.
Not even student body president at one time.
Okay, all right, you got me. 5th grade.
All right.
I ran and won student body president for my class.
Excellent. Okay, so who and why? Who got you to seriously consider to run and why?
Well, it's a number of people. So the other campaign I've been involved with was Measure L in Capitola, which was a fall 2018 ballot initiative. And that was about using the Capitola trestle for a trail for bikes and pedestrians and not a train. And that was a ballot initiative that we won. And after that, we still saw the incumbent in District 1, John Leopold, and many other existing elected officials ignore the overwhelming evidence that a trail makes a lot more sense in the rail corridor than a train. And at that point, a lot of the folks that I was involved with, you may know, I was formerly executive director of Greenway, Santa Cruz County, advocating for the trail. And at that point, a lot of the people that I worked with and had been involved in that campaign encouraged me to run because it was clearly the only way we were going to make change happen.
Right. Okay, before we get much further into the program, I want to thank our sponsors for the District 1 Supervisor debate, which is going to be pretty one-sided tonight, apparently, but hopefully not. Hopefully, through the magic of telephone technology, we'll be able to have a representation from the incumbent's side. But El Rancho Shopping Center is sponsoring this program as a public service. The 21 local businesses of the El Rancho Shopping Center at 38th and Portola. Call your friends and associates and say, let's go out together at the El Rancho Shopping Center. Hey, that's almost poetic, right? It's a pleasure in Pleasure Point. Also, the Walt Eller Company is sponsoring this broadcast, providing homes, apartments, and commercial properties for retail, service, and offices. To open a new business or relocate an existing business, call the Walt Eller Company for available locations. I'm MZ. I'm the host of the program tonight. We're on the air from 6:06 p.m. right up until 8 p.m., and you're going to get an opportunity to hear what at least one of the supervisorial candidates for District 1, Santa Cruz County, his platform, and hopefully the other as well via telephone. So you might our phone number, as usual, is 831-479-1080. The email address is mz, that's my personal email, mz@ksco.com. And either one of those are methods you can utilize to participate in the program, ask a question, or make a comment, or whatever. So, Manu, you, like me, are a Santa Cruz native. How did that happen?
Well, I was born at the Frederick Street Hospital back in 1985, so I'm 35 years old, and grew up in around Seabright, and then my parents, we moved around a little bit. We moved down to LA for my dad's work, up to Marin for his work, and then when I was about 10 years old, we moved back to the county, to Corralitos, where my mom and dad still live. And my grandfather, my whole life, has lived near 26th Avenue, and so that's always been an anchor in the county for me as well. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's really given me an opportunity to learn about both all the challenges we face in town as well as all the challenges that rural residents face.
Speaking of challenges, what, in your opinion, is the most difficult challenge facing the First District in the county of Santa Cruz?
Probably homelessness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's even I was just out walking in Capitola, and as I explained to people who live inside the boundaries of one of the cities, you rely on the county for addressing homelessness in our community. And of course, it's a multifaceted problem. We're dealing with mental illness, addiction, and ultimately creating homes for people, and we've got a shortage of those. So, yeah, it's a multifaceted problem, but I think there's a lot of hope in terms of examples we see around the country.
Absolutely. The homelessness, to me, seems that it's more a problem in the city than in the county. Mm-hmm. Now, am I incorrect?
Well, you're correct geographically. Certainly, the most unsheltered people are within the boundaries of the city of Santa Cruz. But from a responsibility standpoint, it's actually the county of Santa Cruz that receives all the money from the state and from the federal government for addressing homelessness. So really, the city of Santa Cruz doesn't have all that much power to address it, even though the problem is largely within its jurisdiction, within its boundaries.
Okay, so if you are in a position of power on the Board of Supervisors, what will you recommend to solve the homeless problem?
We have to fundamentally invest in, to solve homelessness, we need to build homes. And last year, in 2019, we got $10.5 million from the state of California to address homelessness. No strings attached. We could spend it any way we saw fit. Marin County, for example, spent 95% of that money on building a permanent supportive housing. We built exactly 0 homes.
Well, what was done with the money? It was proportionate? In other words,
right.
Other counties are proportional to the size of the population of the
unsheltered
county?
individuals.
Okay.
Yeah, so
well, we must have a much. Am I correct that we in Santa Cruz County, because of our mild Mediterranean climate, have a higher percentage than a lot of other places?
We do have a higher percentage, and as you could hear, just Marin actually got around, I think, $4.5 million. We got $10.5 million. So
twice as much.
So they probably have less than 1,000 unsheltered individuals in Marin. We've got about 2,200 here in Santa Cruz County.
Okay, so what was done with that money?
Well, it was distributed to about 20 different nonprofits, and a lot of it went towards different programs. A lot of housing coordinators were hired, people to help folks find housing. But of course, as we all know, even if you don't have a housing coordinator, that's really hard to do. And so, a lot of the people you talk to who are involved in this said we could have spent that money better. We should have spent it, I think, on primary capacity, building tiny homes or pallet shelters.
I love the tiny home idea, and I've read in your campaign literature that you're a big proponent of tiny homes. Talk to us about that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Tiny homes, we see them working to address homelessness, certainly. And you might have also seen Housing Matters, formerly the Homeless Services Center on Coral Street, recently got 10 of these pallet shelters. They're basically like a tough shed, but for humans. And so those can be assembled really quickly. Those are sort of their most basic option. And then, of course, you have more permanent housing. And I really like the example of Community First Village in Austin, Texas, where they have now, I believe it's close to 400 tiny homes on 50 acres of property there. And
Of what are they constructed?
oh, in this case, those are wood construction.
So what about the whole idea of shipping containers being used as tiny homes? I'm sure you've thought about or heard about that, right?
Oh, certainly, yeah, and those are really cool. I don't know.
Are they not as inexpensive as
I'm sure
people like me think they are?
I think that is what it comes down to, is the cost of construction.
Uh-huh.
And I should say, tiny homes are not just for people who are unsheltered today and who need a home. I mean, my good friends are building a tiny home because it's the only way that they can afford to get into home ownership. So it's what a lot of us are facing here.
Are these friends building that home on land that they own or that they have some special right to that is affordable to them?
They're building on land that they're renting. So this is an opportunity for them to own the tiny home, rent the land.
Sort of like the mobile home parks,
Yeah.
right?
Now, technically, this is illegal today in the county
What?
to rent home and rent land and place a tiny home on it.
So what happens if you're caught doing that?
I imagine
Either the owner of the property or the owner of the tiny home, on the property. What happens?
I believe it falls under RV laws, and you're not allowed to park one for more than 90 days. I don't know exactly what the fine is, or if there's a red tag involved on the structure. I don't know exactly what the punishment is, but yeah.
So
something.
What is your plan regarding tiny homes?
Legalize them.
Legalize them and make the permit process streamlined or what?
Easy to get. Yeah. So Santa Clara County just legalized tiny homes. They have an ordinance we could look at and adopt, modify it maybe a little bit, or just adopt as is here. I think it's much more important to know where all the tiny homes are in our county through the permitting process than to just have people build them illegally and.
Oh, definitely. That's been a pet peeve of mine for as long. That's why I own the radio station here, because back in the late '80s, there was a group called Citizens for Planning Reform that I was active with, and the radio station had just been sold from the McPherson family and the Santa Cruz Sentinel newspaper to a group called Fuller Jeffrey Broadcasting Company. And they didn't understand this community at all. They tried all kinds of formats with KSCO, and none of them worked. Somehow they stumbled into talk radio, which I thought was great. I know why they stumbled into it, because I made friends with Jeffrey of Fuller Jeffrey, the guy whose name is one of the guys whose name is on the window. And I said, you've tried a bunch of music formats on the radio station. Have you ever thought of trying a talk show? And he says, well, any ideas? And I said, yeah, reforming the planning department,
go.
And that was back in the 80s, where people were committing suicide almost because of having to tear their hair out with the planning, the permit process to get a permit for anything.
Yeah, I don't think a whole lot has changed.
Unfortunately, that's what I understand, which is very, very sad. Anyhow, we started a group called CPR, Citizens for Planning Reform.
Love it.
And we started the first talk show here on KSCO in 1988, which would have been 3 years before the station came up for sale and was purchased. It was a very popular program, a lot of popular. And we built an amazing, what do you call it? war chest of funds, because people were throwing money at us because they said, this is something, what you're doing is amazing and what needs to happen. Now, none of us, nobody wanted Santa Cruz to be unbridled and unrestricted and become a dense Silicon Valley type place. I mean, we all love the environment here.
Absolutely.
We all live here for a reason. But to be treated like a criminal, wanting to, as if you're this is what happened to me in the city of Santa Cruz, not even the county. City and the county were both equally bad back then. I have no idea what they're now.
The city's a little better now.
Yeah?
County's pretty much equally bad.
I had a 72-foot by 125-foot upslope lot that I had saved and saved and saved and purchased with the idea of building my dream home on it. And I was treated as if I had proposed to develop all of the open space on the coast between Santa Cruz and San Francisco, to get a stinking permit for this little, and then they had a design review. This is like 1979, 40 plus years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if it's changed.
It's not changed. I hear these
they
stories
told
all
me
the
what
time.
color I was allowed to paint my house and of what materials it was to be composed.
Right.
And I got to tell you, it changed my politics very quickly. I said, this is what the people who are supposedly reasonable people here's what they've done.
This is what government overreach
Yeah.
looks like.
Yeah.
I hear
So
stories
it
like
changed
that.
my politics, and being the host of the Citizens for Planning Reform talk show on this station from 6 to 8 p.m. My gosh, it's the same time
It's
slot we're in
fate.
right now.
Yeah.
Wow. It just got me started on, I was hanging around the radio station when I heard rumblings that it was for sale or going to be for sale. And
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
so here we are. I mean, the last almost 30 years of my life has been devoted to this station and making it a voice for everyone. Now, not everyone's taken advantage of it, but it's there for everyone to take advantage of.
Hopefully my opponent will call in tonight.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
479-1080. That's area 831-479-1080. Or mz@ksco.com.
Yeah, but MZ, you're right. I mean, it's still going on. I heard a story the other day about someone being told that the color of their tile on their roof wasn't the right color, that they should change that.
By the government or by the neighbors in conjunction with the government? Because that's what I was facing.
By the planning department. Yeah, not the neighbors. And then I heard a story about someone trying to build a 4-foot fence in order to create a beer garden environment, and they've spent $50,000 in permits and practically a year of their time, and they're still not through the process. They're still being, it seems like a constant process of trying to get to know. And this guy is at his wit's end and doesn't know what to do next. He's practically out of money, right? And he's just trying to start.
There was a guy who was in our group, a guy named Dan Garr, who's had a tragic sailing accident and lived for a few years as a paraplegic. But he used to say things, and he was a professor of planning and urban development at San Jose State U. And he would say things like, he had a great acerbic sense of humor. He would say things like, Santa Cruz is a prosperity-free zone with this kind of attitude, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really holding us back. There's no doubt about it. That's why it's one of my first priorities. Because if you think about...
First priority is what? The housing or fixing the planning department, which you say still needs fixing?
Absolutely, fixing the planning department, because it's going to help a lot more people get to work. Building employs a lot of people in our community. As we're looking at how do we create an economic recovery in these times, how do we help over 900 homes be rebuilt after the fire? It all comes back to the planning department streamlining that process and making it easier for people to build again.
I wonder what John Leopold feels about reforming the planning department. I wish he was here. I wish he or someone would call in. I mean, maybe someone who knows John will call in and who's listening right now. That would be great.
I hope so, but he's had 12 years to do something about it and hasn't.
You sound like Trump talking about Biden for 47 years.
Well,
it brings me a little. It makes me think of.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone can do anything about this, it's the supervisors. So, and nothing's been done. So I think if
Okay,
anything,
so
we need some
how
fresh
would you
perspective.
reform? This has always been my favorite subject.
Yeah.
How would you reform the planning department,
Well, first, I think.
which you say is the same or hasn't changed in 40 years?
Yeah. I think first we might have to look towards just reducing the amount of work that's even expected out of the planning department, going to a super stamp model. I mean, if you think about it, when you go and turn in your plans to build something, you've already got a stamp from a state licensed architect, a state licensed structural engineer, state licensed electrician, all these professionals who all have errors and omissions insurance. The county should be like, okay, your ducks are in a row. Here's your super stamp. You go ahead. Rather than what we do today is take the plans, say, thank you, we're now going to review them ourselves by people who probably don't even have as much experience as all those professionals who've already stamped off on the project. And then we spend an indefinite amount of time and an indefinite amount of money reviewing the plans. So that's the first step. Go to more
An indefinite amount of time and an indefinite amount of the applicant's money.
Exactly.
In other words, it's a black hole, right?
Totally.
So it's still that way.
That's what I'm hearing. I haven't tried to build anything myself, but my friends who are
You got to have your head examined before
Yeah.
you do that, apparently, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, we have almost a full board, and everybody wants to talk about the planning department. Oh no, here's someone wants to talk about Simpkins Swim Center. Manu, why don't you give a little speech about what you're all about first? I mean, I already told you the planning department is my favorite subject, so we could talk about the planning department forever. You know, if this show lasted from now until the election, we wouldn't cover it all. I wouldn't get tired, and I wouldn't sleep, because that's how important that topic is to me. And clearly, all the people who are waiting on hold already, or most of them. But why don't you give your candidate statement here? A couple minutes, 3 minutes, whatever, and then we'll go to the phone lines if that's okay.
Yeah,
You like that idea?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, let's do it.
So, as you mentioned, I was born and raised here in Santa Cruz County, and so fundamentally, I'm running because I want Santa Cruz to remain a multi-generational community. And what I'm seeing today is the lack of willingness to make changes is actually changing things faster than ever, and really threatens to make Santa Cruz exclusively a place for the wealthy. And what makes Santa Cruz great is diversity. And that's what helps fuel our artistic and creative culture that we have here. So I'm running to help preserve that. And the way I got into into politics, I never wanted to be a politician. I went to Stanford and studied entrepreneurship, management science, and engineering, and I wanted to start a company. I care about public policy, though, because I see climate crisis as the biggest threat that my generation faces, that we face in general, and needs urgently to be addressed.
From what I've read, I don't mean to interrupt you, but from what I've read, you share that with the incumbent, right? I mean, the climate change and the climate crisis is a big concern of his, from what I've read. Is that your understanding as well?
I haven't heard any statement one way or another from him about that. I know that he does care about the environment.
Okay.
Yeah. And so my original approach to dealing with this was seeing that politics have not been working very well for us lately, was to create a way for people to propose new policy and vote online. And I started a company called Civinomics that let people do just that. And we saw a lot of great engagement, thousands of users here in Santa Cruz County. But what we realize is unless there's someone in elected office who's willing to take those ideas and actually put them into law or make a new program, that you could talk all day as citizens, but you won't get anywhere. And I got progressively more into activism, trying to figure out, well, what's it going to take to make good ideas happen? I should also say that with Civinomics, we did a lot of polling and survey research work for local government agencies, for all the cities and the county itself, different agencies like Soquel Creek Water District. And they paid us good money to go talk to citizens and ask them what they want to do on different issues. And we found that frequently it felt like we were getting all this great public input, but then, just checking the box for public engagement, air quotes, and then putting the report on the shelf. And it seems like we're still seeing that with some of the civil grand jury reports that we've seen come out recently this year, with great recommendations on homelessness, great recommendations for better fire preparedness, and still those suggestions by citizens who've studied the issue for more than a year aren't getting implemented. So, as I said, in my own journey, I figured, well, what is it going to take to get good ideas implemented? I got involved working with Greenway, advocating for a trail in the rail corridor, not a train. We collected over 10,000 signatures from registered voters. We passed a ballot initiative in the city of Capitola. The incumbent and other elected officials still wouldn't listen to us. That's why finally I realized we do need better representation, and I'm going to run myself to provide it. So when you ask about fundamentally what I'm about, I think we need a new attitude of working productively with the public, and I'm here to implement the will of the people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. This is Manu Koenig, and he is running against incumbent John Leopold. Lest you think this is an unbalanced broadcast, you need to understand that John Leopold was invited. He was given an opportunity, or his campaign was given an opportunity to seek or suggest an alternative time, but they said that there was what we were told was that there was no alternative time because he was booked. He was booked solid between now and the election. So that's why Manu is here, sponsored by KSCO as a public service, and commercially by the El Rancho Shopping Center, 21 local businesses of the El Rancho Shopping Center at 38th and Portola, Pleasure Point area here in Santa Cruz. Call your friends and associates and say, let's get together at the El Rancho Shopping Center. It's the Pleasure in Pleasure Point. Also sponsoring this program is the Walt Eller Company, providing homes, apartments, and commercial properties for retail, service, and offices. To open a new business or relocate an existing business, please call the Walt Eller Company for available locations and thank them, and thank El Rancho Shopping Center merchants for sponsoring this candidates forum here on what is hopefully your favorite radio station. Okay, let's, since we have so many people waiting on the line here, let's go to the phone lines and take our first caller who's been waiting for some time. That would be Richard in Live Oak. Hey, Richard, you're on the air on KSCO. Hello? I'm not hearing anything, and we have the phones on. Well, now I hear. All right, I'm sorry, Richard, call back. That we heard a dial tone tells us the phones are working. Gary Arnold, you're next. Are you on the air?
Yes, I am.
Good, you're on the air.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Michael. One of the, well, there's a few, and I'll get this through with 90 seconds maybe, because I usually go on and on. One, the Santa Cruz Board of Appeals was abolished by the Board of Supervisors.
Yep.
They appointed themselves not only the authors, the administrators, and the judgment of what happens in Santa Cruz. I want to know if Manu will take care or address that. Also, a lot of the policies, they call it harmonization. There is basically a secret organization called AMBAG, never reported by the Sentinel, and rarely, even by your host, of AMBAG, which is funded by both the United Nations and the World Bank, and they issue blueprint laws to be adopted throughout 3 counties. They call it harmonization. And then the last thing, I shouldn't. There's so many different things. Anyway.
Well, what's your question, Gary, to Manu about?
I want him to know if he can identify and resist the actually outside of the United States, the world pressure on local government through ICLEI, which is a front for both the World Bank and the United Nations, trying to change our national sovereignty and our local control, and AMBAG, which is considered
Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments. Manu, I'm going to cut in here, not to interrupt you, Gary, but let's just ask Manu if he's familiar with any of these organizations and what his thoughts are.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the organizations. And Gary, I really like your first point about the Citizen Appeals Board, because it is very necessary that we reestablish a Citizen Appeals Board for the Planning Department, as you said today.
What was that for? It was an appeal. If someone,
right.
if you feel you were treated unfairly and were denied a permit or denied the permit that you deserve, then you had the right to appeal. Now you don't?
Well, that's exactly right. The appeals board is, if you feel like you're treated unfairly, you can appeal to the
it's actually in the state constitution. There's only very few exceptions, and our board of supervisors screwed the local contractors and
that was a long time ago, I think, right?
Yes.
That doesn't make it less bad. It makes it worse bad. That no one's done anything about it, I guess.
Yes,
but.
we absolutely need one that's composed of people, of contractors and architects and other people who have a lot of experience in the field and can tell what's right and wrong and can act as a check on our planning department. And as Gary said today, we fill that state requirement of having an appeals board by having the Board of Supervisors act as the appeals board. But that's problematic because, first of all, the board has a lot to do already. They're not experts in building, and that means that they're frequently going to be taking the recommendations of planning staff.
Judge, jury, and executioner, it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I think it's...
what's interesting is their proportion of wealth as you watch their terms in office. There are favored issues going on. But go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll just finish. So we definitely need a Citizen Appeals Board. That's one of the early ways that I'll seek to improve our planning department. And the other thing, I do believe very much in local control. And so to your question about AMBAG and ICLEI, I do believe that Santa Cruz County should make its own laws as far as building and planning in our community.
Yes, we need to break away from that. Thank you very much for your concise answer.
All right. Thank you for
welcome,
calling, Gary. Let's try again with Richard in Live Oak. We couldn't hear you before, Richard. What about now?
The reason we got our power cut off right as I was going on the air. I'm up in the mountains right now.
Oh.
And I was calling hard line, and they just cut our power. I was informed that might happen tonight. So anyway, it's a fire protection thing. But thank you for putting me back up to the top, and I'm really excited to get on here because I have had two incidents with the planning department that have cost me $100,000 at least. I'm a little afraid to talk about any specifics because I'm afraid that they could. Actually, part of what happened was I've owned this house since 2004, but as I've come to find out over the years, there was a conflict before I bought this house with the previous owner, and it carried right through to me.
Okay.
And it's such a long story.
Richard, we don't have time for it. I'm sorry. And I need to say, that's what Citizens for Planning Reform was, what got me into this mess here at the radio station from 30-something years ago. It was a cathartic thing for people to go on and on and on about what was making them tear their hair out of their head. We can't do that now, unfortunately, Richard. But please cut to the chase if you have a question for Manu. Okay?
That's what I'm trying to do. If you'll just allow me.
You have to cut to the chase. You have to cut to the chase.
Exactly.
Cut to it, please.
So what I'm saying is they have a culture down there of abuse, and it's really out of control. And my understanding is it's the worst planning department in the country. I don't know if that's true. Of course, I've had land use managers and all kinds of people, but we need just a total overhaul in the planning department, and that's why I called. And I'm very excited that we have a candidate who's focusing on that. I've dealt with Leopold a little bit about it, and frankly, it was a dead end. They listened to me and they gave me empathy, and nothing happened. And that's time. So I'm really glad that we're taking a good look at the issue.
Yeah. Well, Richard, you're not the first person I've talked to who has just said that they're, as you said, afraid to come forward, that there's some sense of, retribution might come down. So thank you for sharing your story. And to your point about accountability, I think one of the things that we can do is, let's just start by making the data transparent, right? Let's make sure that the key performance metrics for our planning department are publicly available. Things like, how many rounds of review on average does it take to get a permit? How many permits are being issued after the second round of review? And, how many permits is each planner issuing per month? And let's just start by publicizing that data, and that'll create some accountability.
Okay, Richard, hope that helped here. Appreciate your call to 479-1080. Becky in Aptos.
Hi, Manu, thank you so much for running. I really applaud your bravery and your energy, so thank you. You are refreshing.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you for running as I'm assuming this is Becky Steinbrenner.
It is.
You ran in, of course, in District 2, so you know how hard that is.
It is very hard work, and I really am grateful to you for doing what you're doing. Thank you. I had planned to ask also, as Gary did, about the citizens' the fire and building code appeal that happened in 2008 when the board assumed power of that. And, the thing about an appeal before the Board of Supervisors, it costs $1,800 to bring an appeal before them. So that in itself is prohibitive for many. And as you said, Manu, they are not experts. So the Building and Fire Code Appeal Board was made up of industry professionals, and we really do need to bring that back, especially now as the county is saying they are not going to let a large number of people rebuild on their land in the CZU burnt-out areas.
What?
Yes.
Did I miss something?
No, they're saying that. They're saying that. So you need to listen to what they're saying, and it's coming from the planning department, and also CAL FIRE will have a big piece in this. But it's still, they're still working out what they would require people to do in terms of additional soil studies, building roads that are now up to code that really would be expensive, and being hooked up on PG&E when many of these people were off the grid to begin with.
Yep.
So thank you. I really, now I'm going to jump to the planning department. Still, in riding up the elevator to the board meeting last week, I found a man just so livid because he was taking plans to the planning department. The planning department requires online electronic plan filing. He said his plans had been held up for 8 weeks because he hadn't had the proper bookmarks in his electronic filing. 8 weeks that was held up. It's those kinds of stories that you and I are hearing all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to close and let other people get on, but I am interested in hearing what you think about the Pure Water SoCal project. SoCal Creek Water District's plan to inject 3 million gallons of treated sewage water into the mid-county groundwater supply instead of using it for irrigation. And I'll jump off the phone so others can join in. Thank you so much, Manu.
Thank you, Becky.
Good luck to you.
Thank
Good
you,
luck
Becky.
to you. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so we finished on Pure Water SoCal there. I've actually been involved in the issue of what to do about a supplemental supply for a long time. The SoCal Creek Water District was one of our first clients with Civinomics, and we were originally asking people if they supported a desal plant or not. And so this has been a very long process in getting to the Pure Water SoCal project that we have today, about a decade. I do support the project, the reason being that we have a critically overdrafted basin, and we've seen recycled water developed in Pajaro Valley and Monterey as the solution to dealing with this. I do think, in nature we see dilution is the way that water often becomes drinkable. If you look at the Midwest or East Coast, you have a lot of cities that are treating their wastewater to secondary treatment and then putting it back in a river and then the city down the river takes that water out, treats it, and uses it as drinking water. So reuse, I think, is a part of the natural water cycle, and I support the Pure Water SoCal project, and I support any other solutions. I support sort of an all-of-the-above strategy when it comes to ensuring that we have enough water in our community. That includes more gray water systems, looking at composting toilets, incentivizing cisterns, and continuing to look at water transfers.
Okay, lest you think that the phone lines are jammed, they are not. There is only one phone caller waiting. We will get to that phone call in a moment, but I have invited participation via email to mz@ksco.com, and Aaron Wayne has a question for the guest. If you are able to provide more housing for folks, will it be secured for folks who are local? Because if you don't, all you will do is invite all those people over the hill who want to live by the beach. Well, I don't know. How American is it to restrict? It's a good question, but I don't know how. You want to answer it?
Yeah, it is a great question, Aaron, because I believe in market science, but with and supply and demand. But as you suggest, there's. And many people say to me, there's infinite demand to live here in this beautiful climate. And the more you build, the more people will just move here. So I do think we need to look at measures that will make that housing that we build more attractive to people who live and work in our community today than it would be as a second home for someone. And I think we can do that in incentivizing affordable by design units. I think we can do that in terms of some of the parking requirements. And we can also look to what other regions dealing with these kinds of issues have done. So, for example, in Hawaii, they have a tiered property tax rate that homeowners pay one rate, second homeowners pay another, and vacation rentals pay a third rate. And in Vancouver, they have a real estate speculation tax, so that if you don't live in your home more than 6 months out of the year, you pay an additional fee for that. So, those are all things that I would look at as far as ensuring that the housing stock that we do build, it goes to people who live and work here and people who really need it.
Andres, who is a frequent caller to KSCO and the recipient of at least 2 of the best calls of the show, coveted awards, has sent this email today. Questions from the audience? If you are taking questions, yes, we are. I'd like to know how he plans on restructuring the authority given to the health officer. Gail Newell has taken it too far and needs to go to jail. Now, wait a second, there's more. Also, will Manu be his own man, or will he do whatever Carlos Palacios tells him to do, like all the other supervisors do? What will Supervisor Manu do to maximize the personal freedom of the individuals who live and visit this beautiful county? Should I have hit you with one at a time? I'll read it again if you want.
Sure. Well, let me start with yes. I will be, as you say, my own man. The supervisors are elected by you, the voters, in order to actually run the county, and that includes Carlos Palacios. Carlos is, the sort of the equivalent of the CEO for the county, but the board
Is he what
directs the
Susan
CEO.
Moriello used to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the county administrative officer.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I think it's
very, very powerful. Some people say even more powerful than the supervisors themselves.
Right. Well, I take the opposite view, that the supervisors are there to direct the county administrative officer on behalf of the voters. Mm-hmm. The other question that was brought up was about our health officer, and I think that the question generally is about our health response to COVID-19, and certainly. There are certain limitations with how much authority the supervisors have over a health crisis like this. I think that, we've seen throughout California that there are cases where counties can take more of a lead themselves, and that happened with some of the reopening after the initial lockdowns. And I would certainly look at doing things based on the science that's best for our community. And if that means writing Gavin Newsom a letter and saying, here's what we need to do, Gavin, I know it's not what your current plan is, but this is a better plan based on science, then I would certainly do that.
Okay. As I say, we have one phone call, but let's take care of, let's get the emails out of the way. Stuart Howell says, MZ, tell your listeners to go to KSCO.com because the sun has set and your signal is weakened. Well, that's true, but I mean, where are you trying to listen, Stuart? You know, in outer Mongolia, we still have a pretty strong signal even at night. But he makes a very good point, ladies and gentlemen, and I thank him for emailing mz at ksco.com. Yeah, go to our website, or better yet, download our free app, KSCO. Just search your app store for KSCO, and the app is free. And not only will you gain the ability to, on demand, listen to the live stream of KSCO and KOMY individually, you will also gain the ability to call up any great show that you might have missed in our archives. Any program that we produce here at KSCO is automatically archived at zbsradio.com, at ksco.com. But the easiest way to pick us up is to through our app, KSCO app on Android, on iOS for Apple, on iPad, any platform you can think of, we have the free KSCO app for. So use it. Okay, we're talking with Manu Koenig. I asked him ahead of a time about the proper pronunciation, and he told me it's Cone, C-O-N-E, egg. And here I already screwed it up, but I guess worse things have happened. If you want to call us, we'd like to get some calls, some more calls. We had a full board a few moments ago, 831-479-1080. If you want to email, it's mz at ksco.com. Thomas Burge wants to know via email, MZ, what about the seniors in our community? As a senior, I see our age group highly underserved, and we spend all of our energy thinking about homeless. What about taking care of our seniors? Regarding county government, with the smallest county in the state, and we have a huge per capita number of county workers, what is Manu going to do about them? The workers or the seniors?
Well, I'll address the seniors portion of it. A big part of why I live in Santa Cruz is to be close to my grandparents. And I think that we've all learned through the pandemic the value of a good neighbor. I'm always happy to volunteer and help my neighbors with, anything, whether it's getting the mail or food. That's been a real pleasure, helping some of my older neighbors who are not going out. And I think I hosted a panel with a few members who work in senior services just a couple weeks ago. And a big thing we came to was that we need to promote more of a culture of volunteerism in our community. Anything the county can do to help people connect with opportunities to volunteer, working with seniors, or even seniors helping each other is a priority. I would also look to build more senior housing, to the earlier caller's point. That's a great way to ensure that the housing we build here is for people who live and work here, is to create senior housing. And I think expanding lift line so to make it easier for seniors to get around. I'm absolutely committed to doing everything we can to make sure that seniors continue to call Santa Cruz home and enjoy being here.
Yes. You know what our call letters stand for, don't you?
I actually don't.
Keeping senior citizens occupied.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So now that's what we want to see here. Almost full board here, but there's still space at 831-479-1080. But let's take our next caller. That would be Terry, or Colonel Terry, about the planning department. Hey, Terry, you're on.
Hi, Mr. Manu. On the big picture in Santa Cruz County, as MZ certainly calls and knows, is, as the Citizens Alliance for Change some years ago exposed in the county, the planning department had become, and still remains in many people's informed view, nothing but a money grub, an abusive, grasping money from unsuspecting homeowners, outrageous fees, as Mr. Manu makes reference to, outrageous, such that it was reported and documented that Santa Cruz County, with 256,000 people, some years ago had planning department enforcement goons putting red tags and excessive problems on especially little old ladies whose houses they could target easily. We had more planning department enforcement goons than any of the other 58 counties in California, except all of huge 9 million plus population Los Angeles County. That's what the planning department is. And it became that by a guy named, I think his name was the prior planning department director, and corrupt members, and I say things when I have evidence for it, corrupt members like Miss Peary on the Santa Cruz County Council. That was the problem. And they forced little old ladies and others they targeted off their property. And 2 people died of heart attacks induced because of their dealing with the planning department enforcement abusers. 1 man in the planning department offices.
Wow.
Okay, and Mr. Falconer died also, in the opinion of his family and everybody else, after he came back from dealing exasperatingly with the abusive, lying, deceive, corrupt Santa Cruz County Planning Department staff. That's the bottom line, and that still needs to be addressed.
Yeah, that's completely unacceptable. And you know, it's ridiculous that we would be making more money off of enforcement than anything else. You know, if this process is going to work well for people, you know, we should be minimizing permit fees, as you say.
And then all the people who are law-abiding citizens will go get permits instead of most of them not, saying, "Are you nuts? I'm not going to put myself through that."
Exactly. We want people to be good citizens and comply. And guess what? I mean, long term, the more people get permits and reinvest in our county, the more property taxes are going to increase, and the county long term will have a better financial outlook. So it's
Mr. Manu, I hope you'll be a part of, and your sign is on my fence.
Thank
here
you.
in SoCal, your big sign.
Oh, thank you very much.
Do that.
What corner are you on? Or maybe you don't want to say on the air. That's
Go
fine
ahead
too.
and say, Colonel Terry. You got balls. You've got
East
guts.
Walnut Street in Maine in SoCal.
Oh, that's a fantastic location. Thank you, Colonel Terry.
My new $5,000 redwood fence has got
Oh,
you. Okay.
I'm honored.
Did you build it with a permit?
I wish you every success, but I'm serious. The cleanup has to be from top to bottom.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right. The supervisor is the only one that can, or to
When the
collectively
fish
that can take
stinks,
care of this.
it stinks from the head. Yeah.
Correct. And we could cut the county budget 25%. I've done the analysis and not lose a dime in effective services delivered.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
staff and
A mistake some people have made is to diss KSCO. And you know who I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about. The people who are so arrogant that they think, oh, that redneck right-wing left Rush Limbaugh station, no one listens to that. I got news for people. And you know who I'm talking about. Okay, next caller. Thank you, Colonel Terry.
Yeah, thank you.
Next caller, Jan in Slov.
Hi, Manu and.
I wish you would talk louder. You sound so weak.
Oh, okay. Is this better?
A little better.
Yeah.
Okay. When Gordy and I were working with the Alliance for Change, we helped to get the Building and Fire Code Appeals Board together. And one thing we discovered when we got a hold of one of the books for the building people, that actually they're using the UN building code, not the California building code, which is much stricter. Now, Santa Cruz County is supposed to be the second smallest county in the state of California, but it had, at that time and possibly still now, the largest building planning department in the state.
Hate to do this, Jan. We'll hold you over till next hour, but it's the end of the first hour. KSCO
at 479-1080. This special presentation is being brought to you by the El Rancho Shopping Center as a public service by the 21 local businesses of the El Rancho Shopping Center at 38th Avenue and Portola. Call your friends and associates and say, let's get together at the El Rancho Shopping Center It's the pleasure in Pleasure Point. Also being brought to you by Walter Eller, providing homes, apartments, and commercial properties for retail, service, and offices. To open a new business or relocate an existing business, call the Walt Eller Company for available locations. The time is now 7:06. I hand it off to MZ.
Thank you very much, Dave Michaels. And I need to make sure that people understand that this is a public service debate, that's meant to be a debate between the candidates, but only one of the candidates has chosen to show up. The other had schedule difficulties. We said, hey, is there anything we might be able to do to reschedule, to accommodate? And we were told, no, we're totally booked. So Manu, who is one of the candidates, gets the entire 2 hours here today. So if you want to participate, it's 479-1080. That's in area 831, obviously. I don't even need to do the area code, especially if you're a member of the 1st District electorate. Just dial 479-1080, or you can email mz@ksco.com. Before we went to the break, we were talking with Jan in San Lorenzo Valley, and we had to cut her off after only about 15 seconds or so. But if you're there, Jan, please continue.
Yes, I am. Thank you, MZ. Santa Cruz, San Francisco, and Austin, Texas were given awards for implementing Agenda 21. Now, Sam Farr, if you remember, denied knowing anything about Agenda 21.
He did that with the smartest man in the world, with Dr. Wattenberg.
That's right.
He did that on the air, and Wattenberg caught it, or someone sent in something that proved that he had he lied through his teeth. There was a letter that was sent to him by a lady, I believe she was in Boulder Creek, who was with this Agenda 21 group, and congratulating him on everything that he had done to implement it. So a lot of this goes back to Agenda 21, and like Gary Arnold said, AMBAG and ICLEI, and, when we did get the Building Code Appeals Board, we had one meeting, and you should have seen the eyes of all of these employees at the county planning department looking at each other and realizing that they were going to lose control of their little gem. So that was the end of it. They stopped. They discontinued it and said that the planning supervisors would be in charge of the appeals board. So they cheated everybody out. We worked really hard to get that appeals board. And I'd like to know, Manu, would you help us to reestablish that and get Agenda 21 out of this county?
Absolutely. I would. Reestablishing the Citizen Appeals Board is one of the first things that I would do. It's really nice to hear your experience about getting that in place, and I've heard from lots of people that we need that back because there needs to be some check and some opportunity for justice for anyone trying to build in our community. And the other thing that you said was you'd mentioned how we should be on the California Uniform Building Code. That's absolutely true. That code is really pretty efficient. And in some ways, we might want to look at paring the code back a little bit and really focusing on what is outlined in the state code.
We also need a way of doing something about the accountability of our supervisors.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually sue them personally. They take an oath, but they don't follow it. And we've dealt with Dan Butts, Ellen Perry, Marty Wormhoot, and some of the others, Stone and all. And these people are not there to help the citizens. They are, I believe, connected with Agenda 21 and the globalist thing. So I'd like to find a way that we could get some accountability and we can sue them personally for what they do.
Okay.
So I'd like to see us check into that.
Jan, thanks very much for calling 479-1080. Here is Sean in Live Oak about fire preparedness. Huh, Sean?
Yeah, and I guess I mostly got it from Ashley's show where she was critical of John Leopold. And I'm just wondering what, after you've seen what happened there, what would you change?
Yeah, Sean, we definitely, there's a lot we need to do to be more prepared for fire. I mean, the recent fires have cost our county so much money. We've lost over 900 homes. Clearly, we need to be more prepared for the next ones. I would start by putting in a lot more cameras so that we can catch the next fires early. Right now, we only had one camera, and it was facing the wrong direction when the CZU complex fire broke out. There's a lot of recommendations in the civil grand jury report on fire. It's called Santa Cruz County in the Hot Seat. It came out in July, right before the fires broke out. They call for things like improving the volunteer firefighter program. I think we should absolutely do that. We need more hands on deck. We need more work crews. We need to publish a vegetation management plan for the county so that we know where the most dangerous spots are, and we put together a team to address it. So those are some of the things I would do. I think the county should take responsibility for county right-of-ways and county roads to ensure that those can act as better fire breaks. I think we should look at opportunities for creating evacuation routes, maybe connecting rural roads in certain locations that are close together, and that I would work with every fire department in the county to do that, to make sure that every citizen feels like they have a safe evacuation route and knows how to get out. Finally, just looking to empower neighborhood volunteers, even bringing back a county wood chipper program where neighbors can easily rent a wood chipper and clean up around their neighborhoods, things like that, so that we can all start preparing for the next fire today and deal with the next one a lot better.
Okay, Sean, thank you for calling 479-1080. Our next caller is Mike in Santa Cruz about the Capitola Mall / Town Center. Mike, you're on.
Yeah, I was wondering what your thoughts were on that. They're planning on building 750 housing units total, but I wonder how much are going to be low-income housing, because the elevation they're going up, they're going to have like ocean views, and they're all going to be rental properties, and it's going to be like another Santana Row. So I just wanted to think what your thoughts were on that.
Are you talking about the repurposing of the Capitola Mall property?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see that the housing that's developed there goes to people who live and work in our community.
But it won't be affordable for the people that work in our community, I don't think. And they're only going to have like one parking spot per unit underground, and they're going to increase the density, of the whole area big time. You figure if there's 750 units, there's going to be at least 1,500 people moving into Capitola. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on that, because, it's in the works and it's going to happen, and it's going to be completed within the next 5 years. Am I wrong?
I'm not sure if it'll be completed in the next 5 years, but you're certainly correct.
Well, that's what I saw when I went to the community meeting.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm not saying.
I just wanted your opinion.
Of course.
I'm just asking.
Yeah. Well, my opinion is that the housing that's developed, we should make sure that enough of it's affordable, maybe some of it's senior housing, so that what we create does help house our community and alleviate the housing crisis that we're dealing with, rather than just create more second homes and luxury condos here. I think that generally speaking, if that can happen, if we can make sure that some of that housing goes to people who live and work here, that it's the right concept of building on top of parking lots. That can create more funding for public transit, more funding for protected bike lanes, and ultimately we do need to build walkable communities. But I think that your concern about just creating more luxury housing is a valid one, and I would definitely look at policies that we can implement in the county that potentially the city of Capitola could adopt as well to make sure that we address that issue. And just to be clear, it is within the city of Capitola, so the city of Capitola's and the city council there, the planning department there, are going to have ultimate jurisdiction over that. And so largely I can influence that only by providing an example at the county, and of course working with colleagues on the Capitola City Council.
Okay, I want to thank Mike in Santa Cruz for calling. Let's see, our next caller is going to be Richard in Watsonville. Hey, Richard, you're on the air.
Oh, thanks a lot, Mike. I just want to know if this guy's interested in finishing the harbor.
The harbor? Finishing the harbor. How do you mean, Richard?
Well, you know, there's a picture of the way the harbor is supposed to be above the planning department, right?
I'm not aware of that.
I haven't seen that picture.
As you walk in.
Okay. Well, what's different about that picture than reality?
The breakwater's not there. The breakwater's not there.
Oh.
The jetty's not there that goes out that's supposed to prevent these tsunamis and all this other crap from happening, you know? Like a safe harbor. But another thing, I have a dentist friend of mine that he wrote a letter to the editor saying, why do we even need planning departments when we got all this this climate change and global warming and the water's going to rise? Why are they giving out more? I just read yesterday they're going to build a 4-story building on the wharf. Is that right? What the hell's going on in Santa Cruz and Santa Cruz County, man? It's like you just don't. Why hand out any permits at all if it's coming?
Well,
if the global climate's coming, the ocean's going to rise. I've been up to the airport up in Scotts Valley, Sky Park, and I've dug shark's teeth out of the dirt up there. So I know the ocean's been up there before. And here these people are talking about getting ready for it. Oh, man, well, then why in the hell do we have a planning department?
I think the answer to that is that as we build today, and we have immediate needs, that it's an opportunity to do things better, to begin learning, to begin adapting, right? Nothing adapts in stasis. We adapt through the next generation, right? Even evolution happens.
Not even, man. Not even. What you do is you stop it. Otherwise, you continue the problem. Either you guys are going to stop it and start doing things to get away from the water before it rises, or you're not.
Richard, thank you for calling 479-1080. Always great to hear from Richard. Here's Tony in Live Oak about building inspectors. You would know, Tony.
Yes, I was a building inspector for 9 years, and I trained most of the guys who about 6 months later moved over to the town above. It's what do they call it? Anyway, because they were paying $15,000 more per year. Anyway, I quit just as with the planning department was going crazy and getting all kinds of criticism, and the people, the top people at the planning department were quitting and becoming personal advisors to builders. So that's something that hasn't been said. The things were so bad that the only people who could understand what was going on were former employees. One couple was John and Deidre Swift, a beautiful couple who made a lot of money just contacting contractors whom they knew had dealings with the planning departments and had permits in process, and said, well, we can guarantee that you get we'll pay us a fee, and we'll guarantee that you get your permit. And it was like an inside cabal that gave permits to people who hired ex-employees of the planning department.
Right, you shouldn't need a specialist. You shouldn't need a specialist to get through the planning department.
Well, that's what was happening. And I'm sorry that Leopold didn't show up because, all due respect, I wanted to call him a scumbag. My personal mantra is re-elect no one. I've already voted, and I made sure I did not vote for any incumbents. The reason being, I remember lying in bed on March 17th and being told to lock down without any warning whatsoever, and immediately knowing that all of my elected representatives knew in advance what was going to happen, and not a single one of them said boo about this turning us into insects, having no human values whatsoever in any other planning. So I've had a chance to say it, and I'm glad.
Are you feeling much better now, Tony?
Oh, I'm much better than usual.
Okay.
I'm also sitting on East Cliff Drive, and I've seen 200 people walk by, and not a single one had masks, and I don't believe any of them had any around their necks getting ready to get masked up. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Okay, thank you for calling. Appreciate the call to 479-1080. Oh, my God, Becky in Aptos is calling back. Did you get cut off?
No, I did not. I hung up because I thought the phone lines were busy and I didn't want to take up space. But now you're here.
Now you can take up all the space you want. No, I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. We do have quite a number of people waiting to go on.
I will be brief, but I will stay on this time. And just to follow up a little bit with what Tony said, he's absolutely right. Those planners, Dee Murray, and even the former planning director, Tom Burns, make huge amounts of money as consultants, helping people get their
things put through. So I wanted to call back and
are they successful? Do you know, in helping people get their things through?
You know, I don't know. I do know that Tom Burns has been hired on for thousands of dollars to help Soquel Creek Water District get their project put through. Thousands of dollars he's getting.
From what I know about Dee Murray, she's a class act, and that's what I've heard from everybody who's ever had anything to do with her, both when she was at the planning department behind the counter and as an independent consultant now, for what that's worth. So.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I don't know if that same opinion could be had of John Swift and Deidre Hamilton, but I don't think it's fair to use their inside knowledge and relationships to further their businesses and give unfair advantages to people who have the money to afford to pay them to do it.
I
don't
see
think
what
that's
you're
right.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Becky.
Well, I wanted to talk with Manu about the Pure Water Soquel project.
Okay.
Because I hear that you support that, but what I hear you also saying a lot is verbatim what Ron Duncan of the Soquel Creek Water District says. And I want you to do some research on this, Manu, because there is not a water supply problem in this county. There is a water storage problem in this county. Fred Keeley himself, and I can't believe I'm quoting him, but he himself has said this.
I said it in a post on Facebook the other day. I agree. We have a water storage problem primarily.
But the issue, but the issue of pumping treated sewage water, and that's what it is, into the aquifer is a dangerous thing. When it could be used for irrigation, we have water that we can conjunctively use with the city of Santa Cruz to do water sharing, and that is what the Santa Cruz City Water Advisory Council said when the desal fell apart in 2013. Soquel Creek could be pursuing expanded water permits with the city to be able to take more when there is water falling from the skies and it's running out to the ocean. They could get permits to buy more water during those wet months from the city and just not pump here, but they have not done that. This project, Pure Water Soquel, the cost has tripled. First of all, it started off at $65 million, and now it's almost at $200 million. That's going to be on the backs of the ratepayers. They're putting the treatment plant in your district, and they gave your constituents no notice. They were not involved at all in the EIR process at a time when they could have been submitting meaningful comments.
Manu, are you learning something new now from Becky?
I'm pretty familiar with the process. Yeah. So I hear what you're saying, Becky. I do think that we should certainly prioritize storing the water that's already falling from the sky in the aquifer, and that expanded water transfers should absolutely be prioritized. Yeah, to your point about the wastewater treatment, or treating the water in the first district, I would love to see first district residents who live nearby involved, and I have, this is tertiary treatment, so it's not, I've been in neighborhoods in South San Francisco where they were doing secondary treatment of wastewater, and it did smell everywhere. I've also been to recycled water plants like the one in Watsonville, where by this stage in the water treatment process, you actually already have water that's clean enough to pump out to the ocean that we could all swim in. So it is a different kind of a facility, and I would be And in any case, as supervisor, I'm happy to absolutely. I would work with residents of the first district to make sure that they're involved in this process.
Well, they have no choice now. They have no voice. And the water that would be pumped in, they say meets all state drinking water standards, but the fact is there are no standards. There are many pharmaceuticals and things that are unregulated that they cannot remove completely. And the district has been told a certain percent of population would be adversely affected.
Becky, we got to move on. Thank you
Okay,
very much. Here's next caller, Josh in Santa Cruz, about transportation.
Hi, guys.
Hey,
Hi,
Josh.
Hey, so the last time you were on KSCO, Manu, it was on Ashley Scontriano's Common Sense.
Yep.
When talking about transportation policies, you mentioned a desire to have buses depart as often as every 10 minutes. You also randomly cited a bus route, Route 66 to be exact. However, during that interview, you didn't even know where that bus route goes. Well, for the record, it departs Santa Cruz Metro and goes to Capitola Mall via 17th Avenue. It also passes right in front of the KSCO studio where you conducted that interview as well as this one. So, that said, how do you plan on meeting that one bus every 10 minutes policy, and how can we trust you with that you will follow through when you couldn't even properly cite a bus route that passes the district which you could end up representing?
Well, Josh, let's start about the bus service. I go to the bus station that's nearest to me, and frequently the bus comes. I don't know what number that is off the top of my head. I don't think people should have to know numbers. I think colors work better. I know that's what worked best in places like Berlin or San Francisco or Washington, D.C. or New York. So it really needs to be user-friendly. And it needs to come every 10 minutes, as I said, because if it's coming every 30 minutes, I'm afraid I'm not going to ride, and a lot of other people aren't. So, but to your more important question of how are we going to get more funding to actually make this happen, part of it is to implement the sustainable Santa Cruz plan, to build walkable communities, to build more housing where today we only have parking lots, to build over parking lots. Because if we stop requiring 2 cars with every studio apartment, then we have people who are naturally interested in taking public transit. We can create transit funding districts to help fund better public transit and more frequent service. So essentially we can begin to collectivize our investments in transportation and get the bus service that we all want.
Nice. And then finally, what are your thoughts on the downtown's free bus pass program for city workers? Would you consider trying to get that expanded to your district if elected?
Yeah, I voted for that program when I was on the Downtown Commission. I think it's great, and I would definitely look at expanding it to parts of the first district or really countywide.
Well said. Thank you for your time, Manu.
Yeah, thank you, Josh.
Okay, Paul in Watsonville is next. You're on the air, Paul.
Yes, the viewers and talkers on the show have a slip of memory. John Leopold was the one that shot down the the Planning Commission Appeals Board, and that's probably one why he didn't show up today to debate with you.
Oh, wow.
Because you're directly opposing him.
Did you know that, Manu?
I didn't know that.
Okay. And how do you know that for sure, Paul? I mean...
I have the supervisor's minutes from that day.
I see.
And he was the head of the supervisors that were promoting that defeat of the Planning Commission.
You could be onto something.
And this is something more than that, actually. He had also Tom Burns behind him, and other planners are behind him. And but more than that, he's pretty much an overhaul, the reconfiguration of the laws in real estate are needed to bring them up to federal standards. Practically all of the property in Santa Cruz County is federal property, and on the land patents for that property, that means the original deeds for those property specifies that they can only be financed and developed by the owners, not by the county. The county can have absolutely nothing to do with that.
Well, unless the county purchases the property, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't happen though. And if you
Well, it happened. It happened next door to KSCO, and I know that very well because the first few years I used to look out my window at the old Sail-In, Albatross, and Tops bar, nightclub. And I know that the owner or the group of owners of that property tried to sell it for years and years and years and years without. It was a fantastic piece of property, no question about that. But anytime anybody went to the planning department, they got scared away. So the planning, what happened ultimately is that the county of Santa Cruz purchased the property for probably less than 40 or 50% of or less than the true value of the property then, and they basically said take it or leave it, and they put a library there. I'm happy there's a library there. It's nice, but I wanted to make sure that our audience understood and understands that if the county wants something, they're going to use their power to get it. And they don't have to answer to anybody about getting permits. They just do what the bleep they want,
Well, they can be overruled by the government of the United States, which owns the land, and that's by the Article 6, Section 2 of the United States Constitution.
Wow. Okay, sir. Thank you, Paul, for calling 479-1080. We have quite a number of other callers here. Andres in Royal Oaks about sustainability.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It is that there's only one Andres.
Yeah.
And at the moment you're in Royal Oaks.
Hi, Andres.
Hello. So I was listening to you talk about I think what I understood is you were talking about the public transportation and the different options there are from around the world, and how you might look at one of those as an example to implement in Santa Cruz, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you say when you said sustainable? Were you speaking in a financially sustainable context, or did you mean it in a different way?
I was referring to the Sustainable Santa Cruz Plan, which is about climate sustainability. But of course, we need to consider both. I mean, it has to be financially sustainable as well.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the that policy that's there, but I've heard a lot about buzzwords with sustainability and how it's connected to other global plans. So I don't know. I just wanted to award you for saying the magical word of the day, sustainability, in that context, and I'm bestowing upon you one of my famous awards.
Thank you.
Oh,
Andreas.
Really? Well,
yeah.
I mean,
actually the first
it's not
recipient,
transferable. It's not transferable, Andres. I'm sorry.
No, because I don't know. I mean, if you listen to what some of the other callers say and imply about sustainability and Agenda 21 and all that other stuff, I don't know. What are the polls looking like? Is your opponent is it a competitive race? Is it looking competitive, or I don't know. To me, it looks like he's maybe standing down.
He may be standing down. Well, he didn't show up tonight. Yeah,
Might as well stand down if you don't show up for a KSCO debate.
Right.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that he might have been ordered to stand down to allow for Manu, who's going to facilitate an Agenda 21 type of county.
I see. I haven't communicated with anyone related to Agenda 21. Yeah, no, I give you my word on that. I mean, as far as how competitive the race is looking, we haven't done a poll as a campaign because it can be expensive. It can cost $15,000 to $20,000 to do an effective poll. But certainly the feedback that I'm getting from voters is overwhelmingly positive, and I'm feeling very upbeat about my chances.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And for your award, too.
Thank you.
Okay. All righty. Next caller will be Jude in Santa Cruz. Hey,
Hi.
Jude, you're on.
Hey,
Don't
thank
make
you.
it bad.
Also, go by Judy,
take a
but
sad
anyway.
song and make it better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still on, thank you. I'm calling in to ask Mr. Manu, and I am in Live Oak. I live here, so.
Great.
What his actual beliefs are about the so-called climate change, because I am concerned if he is a believer in the 97,000 scientists believe this is true. BS, in my opinion, because as everyone knows, the climate is always changing, and I want to throw in this as a caveat. It's true. The Obamas bought a, 20,000 acre or whatever compound right on the ocean on Martha's Vineyard. If there was such a thing as climate change, would that even happen? I'm just throwing that in. I already believed it is false in the first place. Thank you for taking my call.
Oh, don't you want to hear what Manu has to say?
I'll stay on. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Jude. I do believe climate change is real.
Hi.
And because I can understand it from even just a conceptual standpoint that, the Earth is a closed system. If you had a jar with bacteria in it, eventually the bacteria multiply, and change the climate within the jar. And I think that we're doing the same thing here. I mean, if you look at satellite photos of the Earth at night, there's a lot of people on this planet, and it's hard to believe that all the actions we're taking every day are not impacting the climate in some way. So yeah, of course, climate change has happened for the entire history of the Earth, but that doesn't mean that that humans are not impacting it today. I do believe humans are impacting the rate of climate change, and absolutely. And of course, it's not.
About the Obamas buying the property, please, on Martha's Vineyard. If that's true, why did they buy acreage on Martha's Vineyard? You can look it up.
Well, I like living next to the coast.
Right on the coast?
That's why I live here in Santa Cruz. And
all right,
even if it's
it is a fraud. It is a fraudulent scam to frighten people and to bring in all this money. And if you are a believer in climate change and you're going to be that way, I'm very sorry for Santa Cruz County, even though I want to change. And also, I'm concerned about the trees in Live Oak. The trees are all dying. Nobody seems to care about the trees in Santa Cruz, my MZ. I want to get in a group and create a Live Oak sanctuary city for the trees. Thank you. I hope you agree.
Okay. Well, thank you for calling 479-1080. Here comes Rich in Ben Lomond. Hey, Rich, you're on KSCO.
Yeah, hi. Earlier you were talking about homelessness. I'd like to point out that the homelessness is all over the country. I've talked to people who moved to East Coast, Midwest, Montana area, and I say the problem is we're letting too many people in the country, especially for cheap labor. The problem is there's not enough room for people, and you got to expect that if you got housing for, say, 4 people, and you try and put 6 in, you get people in each other's way, and then costs go up, and et cetera, et cetera. I say we should look at immigration policy because, again, there's too many people in this country. They're all from all over the world.
Well, yeah, but that's not the jurisdiction of the county supervisors. So, I mean,
well, it's we have it as a result of that.
Do you want to ask what Manu thinks about immigration and
sure. What do you think?
Well, I don't think that immigration is directly impacting the homeless issue. I mean, I would be certainly happy. I do think that having good information on who's unsheltered in our community is essential, and I think it's essential to understand how long people have been in Santa Cruz County, whether they went to school in Santa Cruz County, how long they've been here, whether they came here from another country, as you're implying. And I haven't seen data on how many people have immigrated here who are also currently homeless, but I don't think my understanding of the problem is that that's not what's driving it. But I'm certainly committed to finding out.
Great.
Okay, thank you for calling 479-1080. Let's go to Dave, you're so funny. Downtown Owl, OWL in Watsonville. Hey, you're on with MZ and Manu and MZ.
Hi, Manu. I want to know what you're going to do to make yourself accessible, because one of the biggest complaints that I always had, even though I'm not in his area, with Leopold, my personal interactions with him, he wasn't very accessible and very dismissive of public questions. And one of the things I really like about Supervisor Greg Caput is he's frequently on KSCO. He makes himself very accessible, calls in to update the public, and is open for questions and that sort of thing. And I was wondering what you were going to do in that area.
That's a great question. Certainly, hopefully my being here tonight demonstrates my commitment to being accessible. You know, as I said, I've worked in public engagement for over 10 years. I very much believe in our collective wisdom and believe that the more I'm accessible to you, the more better I can understand these issues. I've been actively campaigning at the farmers market throughout this election. And what I've realized is that shouldn't just be a campaign activity, but also an activity of being in office. So I'd like to have a supervisor's tent, if you will, an open booth at the farmers market going forward, where anyone can always interact with me and their county government. I'm considering just having regular office hours where people can come visit me, certainly at the county or in different places throughout the county and the district. Certainly continuing to have come to KSCO events like this. Also, we've hosted a number of panels with experts, as well as open town halls on Zoom. I plan to continue that during if I'm elected. So, and if there are other opportunities as well that you'd recommend, I'm happy to consider those too, because it is extremely important that supervisors represent the voters that they're elected to represent, and that means hearing from you.
That would be much appreciated, and I hopefully you would be able to work with some of the supervisors who have made themselves very accessible, such as Greg Caput. Can I ask you one more question?
Fine with me.
Quite a while ago on KSCO, Mr. Simpkins, who had donated a large amount of money for the Simpkins Swim Center, was very upset that it wasn't, first of all, it wasn't that accessible, especially for senior citizens and children. The Simpkins Swim Center, he thought it was too expensive. And he wasn't just talking without having done some research. He'd spent an extensive amount of time visiting other facilities, such as the one up in the Palo Alto area. And he found that they were able to increase accessibility and lower swim fees and that type of thing by having it open more, conducting yoga and dance classes and everything like that. And he was actually very upset at the time with Supervisor Leopold, because he really wasn't open to some of his kind of learned and studied suggestions for making it a better facility. And I was wondering if that was something you're aware of.
I've certainly talked with Bill about making Simpkins the Simpkins Swim Center as accessible as possible. Bill Simpkins is an endorser of mine. He's contributed to my campaign, and I think that also, as you mentioned, learning from other regions is extremely important. I'm committed to making Simpkins as accessible as possible for everyone in our community.
Well, it's great that you have the support of somebody like Bill Simpkins, who's been an important donator or whatever for the public here in our town.
And not only that, on his website, on Manu's website, there is an impressive list of endorsers of him. I mean, I can't. It's just it goes on and on and on, and these are very substantial people.
You're welcome to read.
I'm also thinking too, because you have quite a background in terms of like kind of high tech. You're younger, and I think understand certain things with social media, whatever. And maybe you could bring some of those skills and some of that experience that I know you've done in some of your entrepreneurial work to being a supervisor.
Yeah, I definitely hope to bring some of those practices. You know, what we've learned in the high tech industry is prototype. Do something rather than plan for ages and ages. Build the minimum viable product, the easiest solution you can. Put it out there. See how people interact with it. Learn from it and improve it. So
I love that answer. I absolutely love that answer because I know from experience you get results that you can never plan on. You can spend years talking about and planning, and it isn't until you do something and it becomes a reality you find out if it's going to be a failure or if it's going to be a success and how to tweak it.
Yep.
So,
and I think your example with the Simpkins Swim Center is great there because, of course, in that example, Bill is actually a super user. He's using that pool all the time, and he saw ways that it could be improved. And I think that part of that model is always listening to your customer, listening to your users, and understanding that the product's never finished, and we can always make it better based on their feedback.
Awesome attitude. Look forward to your triumph here.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Downtown Owl. Okay, looks like Robert in Live Oak has a question or a comment about wastewater.
Like Becky, I would want to talk about the wastewater. That's so unappealing, and we should be building a dam. And now, Manu, if you were to say, go ahead and let's build a dam, I bet you get everybody behind you instead of injecting sewer water into our aquifer. So that's a concern of mine. It's just like poisoning people right straight out, and that's really not.
Is that what the current supervisors are doing, or the majority of the supervisors?
Part of my question was he going to go ahead and put that wastewater into the aquifer? Because I think Mr. Leopold is all into that. No?
Yeah. Can that be true? I mean, he's not here to, accept or deny that.
As far as I know,
well, I think the project's going on forward, and I think he's. Yeah.
As far as I know, Supervisor Leopold has supported the Pure Water SoCal project. I also support it, and if you again look at how wastewater is being used in like along rivers like the Trinity River in Texas, where the water's not even being treated to the same high standards. It's being put back in the river, taken out by the city just downstream, and being used again. So but to your point about dams, we've looked at building new dams in this community and they were rejected. But I do think there's other alternatives for water storage. I'm a big fan of a proposal that Joe Ben Bevirt of Joby Aviation proposed, which is to take the North Coast quarries and look at creating greater water reservoirs there. So
the Soquel Creek has an excellent canyon, and there's nothing else in there for miles. It would be a great place. And then you could either do that the same thing or make the dam bigger over there in Felton. So those are the two things we could do instead of injecting wastewater into our system. And I just wanted to bring up that your Mr. Leopold has been brought up from Pennsylvania and brought out here to do these kinds of decisions. And if you look, there's other politicians around here in this county that come from out of state. Our planning commissioner from 1975 to I think it was 2010 or so, Deming, and he was brought in from out of state. So there's a lot of bad things that happened between 1975 here in this county and up to now, and that guy is not only from out of state. I think he was in some kind of secret club also.
Yeah, well, I was born and raised here, and I'm really interested in making sure that what's best for our community is what gets done.
And I really think all our representatives should be locals, and then we don't get that influence from other kind of Agenda 21 thing, because they'll do anything to you. Agenda 21 and the UN, they'll do anything. And there's been a lot of good points made tonight that has brought that about. And I had a friend up in Boulder Creek, for just one example. He owned 150 acres of redwoods, and they found he had a few junk cars on there, and they stole the property from him. He was a brilliant man. He has a Mars rover power supply and other kinds of NASA projects. But instead, this county would demean someone like that instead of being proud of them. It's really confusing.
Yeah.
Well, how do they steal the property? I don't get it.
A couple of junk cars on there, and they say, oh, well, you owe us this fine because you're not getting rid of the junk cars. Well, the junk cars were
was the fine, I mean, the value of real estate or more? I mean, I don't, is that?
Well, no, now you could buy that same place for pennies on the dollar because everybody knows it was stolen by the county. Nobody wants to buy it because they stole it, and now they're trying to sell it for money. I have a lot of stories. I've been here for 45 years, and if you don't change your wastewater treatment attitude or your view on that, I don't think you could earn my vote either. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Robert. 479-1080. Since we allowed one person to call back, we're going to allow Colonel Terry to call back.
I'm calling back to agree 1,000% with Becky Steinbrenner regarding the Soquel Creek Water District Board of Directors. Corruption, crimes, profligacy, and waste. Mr. Manu, I'm going to support you, and after you're elected, I'm going to help you know the full facts about the Poop to Scoop Pure Water Soquel project. You're talking $130 million in bond debt on 15,000 water customers per household. Spread that out for 30 years. It's Goldman Sachs San Francisco affiliate, in my view, bribing, and I don't say things I haven't got facts to support, at least 2 members of the Soquel Creek Water District. And they're all alternatives. There's the Lockelfer system Jerry Paul suggests. There's the water storage and so forth that would cost $20-some million, not $120 million. That's what's behind it, that money and corruption.
Well, Colonel Terry, I'm happy to sit down and look at those options with you and learn more about this issue.
So the 2 county judges, Gallagher and Schmalz, completely ignored the factual evidence from experts that Ms. Steinbrenner put in before their courtrooms, and they ignored the law, the California Environmental Quality Act law, completely in cahoots because Mr. Basso, and again, I don't say things I haven't got evidence for, Mr. Basso, the county fixer, helped them get on the court. That's what, and Gallagher used to work for the water board and wouldn't recuse himself in a case ignoring Ms. Steinbrenner's worries. And the Poop to Scoop water will be permanently bad. And it will permanently have pharmaceutical pollutants in it that we don't need, and we have an alternative that costs $100 million less.
Okay. Thank you, Colonel Terry. Okay, we've got about 6 minutes left in the program. I'll go ahead and put out the number one more time because this is the last chance that you might have, and I say might because I'm going to tell a story to our audience and to Manu right now. When I look Manu in the eye and I ask him if, after I tell this story, okay? I mentioned the Citizens for Planning Reform talk show that we started in the late 80s, around 1988, on KSCO radio, which was at that time a music station. That was the only 2-hour program that they had that was a talk show, because I suggested that it would be great to have KSCO become a talk radio station in this vibrant community. And the co-owner of the station, J.J. Jeffrey, said, well, what would you talk about? And I said, well, to begin with, the planning process in Santa Cruz, it's horrible. It needs to be fixed. Well, we started the Citizens for Planning Reform program, and we gained a lot of people who said, yeah, I'm with you, including a lady named Jan Butz. Yeah, Jan Butz. I think she still lives here in very close to the radio station, if I'm not mistaken.
Unfortunately, she passed away.
Oh,
recently. Yeah.
yes. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, but I will, and I'm not going to change the story. The story is still the story.
Go on, yeah.
The story is still the story. Jan Butz showed up at all of our meetings and got us convinced that she was going to reform the planning department and that she was totally with us. And she got elected in part by our support. I'm not saying that she wouldn't have got elected without our support. Who knows? We'll never know that. But one thing we do know, she ended up becoming a very powerful supervisor, exactly the opposite from what she said she was going to do. She ended up being the worst person for the planning. She made it 10 times worse than it already was. And she was I'm so sorry I didn't know that she had passed. And but it doesn't change. I thought nothing but the worst of her as a supervisor, because she got in, as far as I'm concerned, under totally false pretenses. I'm going to look you in the eye, Manu. Are you going to be like her if you get elected? Are you going to say that you're going to fix the planning department and then end up with your power being like her and being just the opposite? If I know for a fact that if she didn't like you, she would do things like other supervisors with their power would do. They would see to it. She would throw the wrenches into the cogs and make things worse for you. Like somebody else named Rob Lee Levy, a person who said, "Oh no, I would never go on KSCO. That redneck right-wing conservative Rush Limbaugh station. They're nothing. Nobody listens to them." Guess who didn't get reelected?
Well, MZ, I'm going to look you in the eye. Come back here. I'm going to look you in the eye and tell you, no, I am going to follow through with my word. I've heard too many stories like those of the callers here tonight.
So did Jan Butz.
Well, what's the point in having any power if you're not going to use it on behalf of the people who vote for you and who tell you these stories about how frustrated they are? So I'm deeply committed to fixing the planning department, and if I don't get that done, you invite me right back here. I will show up, and we'll have an accountability session. No, I'm going to do more. No, I don't. I hope to come back and we'll have some callers saying how great it's been to work with the planning department recently, because we've gotten things straightened out.
Wow, wouldn't that be wonderful? And this would become a very nice, wonderful place to live. And it would, to use the words of Dan Garr, who called it a prosperity-free zone, that was before it became Silicon Beach. And I think that Silicon Beach, with reasonable planning, would be a much better place, and it would have elements of affordability, which it should be for everyone. You know.
Definitely, yes. Reasonable planning could go a long way. I think
that people wouldn't. I don't know for sure, but I'll bet for every person who goes to the planning department and goes through the process, I'll bet there are 20 or 30 who don't. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. I know that with the current process being proposed, there's a lot of folks who have lost their homes to the fire that are not going to go through the official process if it stays the way it is today.
That's very, very sad.
I think it's great that we're here at the same original hours that you had the CPR. It's
wow.
Full circle.
Yeah, isn't that something? Well, you're a stand-up person for showing up, and I wish Supervisor John Leopold had, but he didn't, and that's his business and the business of his campaign. I want to thank our audience and our callers. This is KSCO Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey.